Go to the football field now. The huddle broke at Browns rookie mini camp for the first time Friday in Ohio, with, of course, all eyes on Shedeur Sanders. But the Browns have 2 rookie QBs in their room, as they also selected Dillon Gabriel in the 3rd round. Kevin Stefanski has called it an open competition in Cleveland. However, should be noted, Gabriel took the first snap of team drills in minicamp, not Sanders. You know who's there for it? NFL reporter Kimberly A. Martin joins us now from outside of the Browns practice facility. And Martin, I know you were at camp yesterday. What more can you tell us about how Shedeur looked and what they were saying about him in his first day at camp?
Yeah, listen, Shay, a lot is being thrown at Shedeur Sanders, as is the case with all of these rookies who are trying to get up to speed on this playbook. And here's one thing that stood out yesterday after the first day of practice. You know, typically on day one, coaches will see those quote-unquote rookie jitters. But both Shedeur Sanders and Dillon Gabriel showcase flashes of that same poise and that passing ability that we saw in their college careers. And that was a good sign. Now, as you said, it's still early. It's still day one. But, in practice, they had a longer 7-on-7 period to accommodate the 2 quarterbacks. And as you noted, Dillon Gabriel did take the first reps of the team period. And I can tell you, as we were waiting for Stefanski, we saw Shedeur Sanders. He was one of the last players to leave the field. He stayed late to kind of throw passes to a rookie tryout. So, again, these are just the first early days of rookie minicamp.
Just starting to get to work, right? But Sanders is one of 4 quarterbacks currently on the roster. And so this is going to continue to be a thing,
yes.
Kimberly. So what did Kevin Stefanski have to say about this entire quarterback situation?
I'm glad that we are at least mentioning Dillon Gabriel, because he is another quarterback that is here, and a lot of attention on Shedeur. But, Kevin Stefanski was asked pointedly, tell us about how did you decide that Dillon should get the first reps? And typical Kevin Stefanski fashion, he said, I wouldn't read into that. I think Stefanski's main point yesterday was this competition is ongoing, and rookie minicamp is part instruction, part competition. But there's a lot of work that has to be done. These guys have to take what they're learning in the meeting room, bring it out onto the field. So, Shay, as much as we want to know who is going to be the Browns quarterback this season, we are so many months away from that, and this is just the first step. So let's not read into it, but we're going to be watching today, because we're going to hear from these quarterbacks a little later.
Of course, we're going to read into it. That's what we do here at ESPN. And I'm over here talking about 4 quarterbacks in the QB room. I mean, we should add 5. Deshaun Watson is still in that quarterback room as well, although it's very unlikely we see him on the field. He still will be a part, I will assume, meetings and whatnot. Kmart, I am sure I will talk to you.
Lewis, if I were to say Shedeur Sanders is going to be the Browns' starting quarterback when this season begins, is that ridiculous?
No, Greeny, it's not ridiculous as long as they are able to. And I heard Dan Graziano talking about this morning earlier on ESPN radio. Yeah, I listen to it when I'm in my car in the morning. It's all as long as they can get him enough reps. And it sounds like Kevin Stefanski is aware of the fact that in order to create a real quarterback competition, he has to kind of change some things in terms of the way he divvies out reps during the preseason and during the offseason. If he can compete with Dillon Gabriel, if he can compete with Joe Flacco, he can compete with Kenny Pickett, there's a very good chance that if this is an organic competition with a level playing field, he could be your starter week 1, no question about it.
Look, sometimes we attach this number now. He was a 5th-round draft pick, and I understand that there was a reason for that. I'm not pretending it doesn't matter at all. But what I'm saying is if he had been drafted in the 2nd round or the 1st, which is what we were expecting, then there'd be almost no debate about it, right? We'd be with exactly the same body of work in college and the same skill set. We would absolutely be forecasting him to be the starter, especially, Dan, when you consider the other options they have available.
Right, but he is a 5th-round pick, and there was another quarterback they drafted 2 rounds earlier this year.
Right.
In addition to Joe Flacco, who helped them get to the playoffs 2 years ago, and Kenny Pickett, who he's in the mix as well. So they have 4 guys. They need to get them all practice reps. Kevin Stefanski, what Lewis was alluding to, he put 7-on-7 drills into the rookie minicamp. Usually rookie minicamp is just, classroom stuff, very basic stuff, nothing really, and in terms of team competition. But he wanted Shedeur Sanders and Dillon Gabriel to be able to get some reps at a time of year when they weren't competing with veterans for those reps. So he's very conscious, Stefanski is, of trying to make this as good, as close a competition as possible among all 4 of them.
I'm going down with the ship with my friend Mel Kiper on this one. He is the most underdrafted player that I can ever remember. I genuinely believe if he has a chance, a real chance, he's going to wind up making a run at the starting job there sooner rather than later. All right, the next one. Lewis, I was looking over on ESPNBet.com. The Bears' win total for this year is 8.5 wins. This is at ESPN Bet. They only won 5 games last year. So if someone said they're going to be the most improved team in the league this year, is that ridiculous?
That's not ridiculous at all. Look, I think, last year when we talked about the Bears and specifically offensively and the lack of development that we saw from Caleb Williams, we pointed squarely to Shane Waldron, the former offensive coordinator, and the fact that there just wasn't a good plan on top of the fact that there just wasn't enough surrounding him. Well, all of that has changed this year with Ben Johnson coming in, with the revamping of the interior 3 of the offensive line, and then the work that they did in the draft, Greeny, and we were there on the desk and we saw it. We saw them draft Colston Loveland. We saw them draft Luther Burden, wide receiver, tight end, respectively, to go along with a guy like DJ Moore, and Rome Odunze. This team is loaded offensively. Now it's about putting together a good plan and Caleb living up to his potential that he showed in college, that he showed at Oklahoma, that he showed at USC. And if all that comes together, this could be one of the more explosive offenses in the NFC and in the league overall. Now, I know that's a big leap. People say, hey, look, let's just crawl before we walk. Let's walk before we run. But look, this league, people can go worst to first in a hurry. I'm not saying they're going to go worst to the first in their division, but they will be much improved. One of the most improved teams in the NFL.
Yeah, not at all ridiculous. I mean, look at last year's Washington Commanders, how quickly things can turn around if you put the right people in the right positions. A lot of unknowns with that coaching staff in Chicago, but, they're well regarded, and obviously I think the defense will be good under Dennis Allen. So I think the Bears have a chance, but the division, as you mentioned, is rough. That is rough, and that is going to probably cost them on their win total because they're going to have to fight against those other 3 teams that all made the playoffs last year. Most improved team, I'd be looking more at like a San Francisco or a Dallas, teams we've seen do it and then had their seasons last year done in by injuries.
Oh, you mentioned Dallas, did you? Well, isn't that a good segue? So yesterday, A.J. Brown was talking about, of all things, the Eagles' biggest rival, and listen to what he said.
Now, we're going to have to worry about him, for sure. Hey, we're going to have to worry about him. No, I like the trade. I do like the trade. I like the competition, and I like George Pickens. I like CeeDee Lamb and that collab, and it's gonna be exciting to watch, bro, because all that does is bring the best out of us. So if we know how they coming, we know we gotta step it up,
Cowboys trading for George Pickens could wind up being one of the most undercovered stories of this entire offseason if he, and it's a huge if, plays up to his enormous potential. Their win total is only 7.5 wins at ESPN Bet. So, Lewis, here's a question I never would have thought I would ask on a show I host, but are we sleeping on the Cowboys? Am I not paying enough attention to the Cowboys?
I don't think so, Greeny. Look, I'm gonna look at this from 2 sides, okay? There's a reason why, when we're talking about football and we're talking about team building, that it's just not about physical skills and what things look like on paper. And the fact that the Pittsburgh Steelers pulled the plug on George Pickens and said, hey, look, instead of looking at this 3, 4, 5 years down the road and investing the kind of money we, need to invest in a guy like you in order to retain you, meaning an upper echelon wide receiver, we just don't think that the risk and reward is in our favor. So we're going to send you down the road to Dallas. So look, we understand the kind of things that George brings as a high riser, above the rim type of player outside the numbers as a true X-wide receiver, a guy who can win one-on-one, who's a quarterback's best friend. But it's more than just that. It's about fitting into that culture, being a positive influencer on that locker room for 17 weeks. Not just for a mini camp, not just for a play here and there, but a guy who's going to show up on time, who's going to be a force multiplier, who's going to be dependable, who's going to be a good team. All of those things are what adds up to you, helping you make a team a contender, not just highlight reel catches.
You made an interesting point that they won 7 games last year without their quarterback.
Quarterback got hurt halfway through the season. I'm pretty sure that they've been over 7.5 in every one of Dak